مباركين طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, continuing on in our series of Nihayat al-Zalimin, the end of the oppressors. The next person we will talk about, the way that, or the end that this person met was Abu Lahab. And Abu Lahab, his name was Abdul Uzza ibn Abdul Muttalib. And the second half of his name obviously sounds familiar, Abdul Muttalib. He was the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the things you notice in the stories of the prophets is that their enemies, or the people that went to extremes to try and harm them, were not people who were complete strangers to them. Right? They're always, or for the the majority of the time, there are people who know them actually personally very well. Right? Personally very well. Even when you have Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun, right? Even though they're not from the same group or whatever it might be, but Musa alayhi salam was raised in the house of Fir'aun since he was a child. Right? And you see this recurring theme happening throughout all the stories of the prophets. Every single prophet of Allah Azza wa Jal was well known and respected by their people. Right? Well known and respected by their people. They had an awe for them. They had a respect for them. But all of the sudden, all of those things turn upside down the minute you start challenging people's power and position and wealth and influence, etc. People tend to like you as long as you don't mess with things that will now criticize decisions that they have made. And so Abu Lahab is an uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, someone who was one of the part of the raising of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet's father passed away before he was born. His mother passed away when he was just a child, and so his uncles and all of these people, they took care of him, they raised him, they were there for him, right? And so he's not someone who is who's just as a distant enemy from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Abu Lahab, two of his sons were also married to the daughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's known as Abu Utbah. Utbah was one of the son-in-laws, early son-in-laws of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the open call, made the open da'wah to the people, Abu Lahab, obviously has a surah in the Quran, right? Surah Al-Masjid, that is revealed about him. But when the Prophet ﷺ stood on the mountain and called the people and said, if I was to tell you there was an army that might come at you in the morning or the evening, would you believe me? And they all said yes. And then he said, then I am here to warn you about the punishment of a great day. And he gave them the da'wah. It was his uncle Abu Lahab who said, "Alihada jama'atana, this is why you've gathered us here." And he was like shaking his hands and like clapping his hands at him, with just complete utter annoyance. That this is for this reason you've gathered us here. You've completely wasted our time. And he said, "Tabban laka," or "Tabban laka sa'ir al-yawm," that may your "Tabban laka" means like may you lose everything, right? May you lose everything. May you just be completely cursed and lose everything. And he kind of mentioned for the rest of the day. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Al-Masjid, where he said, responded to him word for word, right? Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tabba, because he made a gesture with his hands. So may Abu Lahab's hands be destroyed. Maybe he completely destroyed. And the surah that he set down, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically tells us that from the earliest moment in the da'wah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this man will go to Jahannam, him and his wife will be in Jahannam, right? And from that moment on, he never has an inclination towards the deen. One of the things that some of the ulama, they mentioned that if anybody wanted to disprove the prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ, if only he pretended to be a Muslim, if only he became a hypocrite, pretended to be a Muslim, then he would have said, how can I go to Jahannam when I believe him? But he didn't even have the inkling to do that. And one of the things he would do is he would follow the Prophet ﷺ as he would go tribe to tribe. When the Hajj season would come and the tribes would come into Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ would go to them, talk to them, advise them, give them the da'wah. And right behind him, Abu Lahab would come and say, this man is a sorcerer, he's a madman, he breaks families apart, I'm his uncle, I can tell you, I know him since he was a child. Right? And he would follow him around. And some of the Sahaba who were young at the time, they mentioned seeing this happening. That a man with really bright face and red cheeks is why it's called Abu Lahab, by the way, right? His bright face and red cheeks. He's not called Abu Lahab because of the hellfire. He's called Abu Lahab before any of that happens. He also is someone that there were norms that were common amongst the Arabs at the time. And one of those norms was you always stick with your tribe no matter what, right? And this is why they had so many wars. That somebody would come, they have a personal issue, one person, another person, they would fight, somebody would get hurt, the whole tribe would show up, and now you would have war, for decades or ages now happening. Why? Because these two people fought. But he broke those norms. He broke those norms. When the boycott happened of the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, all of the family of the Prophet ﷺ, they went into the boycott, even though the majority of them had not accepted Islam. But they went on principle that if you're going to boycott one of our members, you're boycotting us all. And they all went into Shi'b Abi Talib, right? And they went there, and so many of them were not Muslim. But because of the principle that you always stick with your tribe, they went into the boycott. They suffered in the boycott with the Muslims at the time as well, except for Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab said, no, I'm not going to go. And he broke the norms. And one of the things you'll see that happens as well with oppressors or people that want to cause you harm and whatever, they will have this sense of hypocrisy, right? That there's one thing he's saying the Prophet ﷺ is calling against everything the Arabs have always stood for, right? That's his claim. That he's calling you away from the way of your forefathers. And he is the first one to violate the way of their forefathers by not standing with his tribe no matter what. And so there's always this sense of hypocrisy that you'll find amongst the Zalimin, right? That they will claim one thing, but they will violate that as well because, no, that doesn't personally suit me. That doesn't have any benefit for me. And so this is there's a lot of things we learn from the examples of these people as well. One of the sons of Abu Lahab also, when he came to divorce the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, did it in a very disgusting way, right? He came to the Prophet ﷺ, brought his daughter, shoved her basically in her face, spat at the Prophet ﷺ, and just showed his enmity. And the Prophet ﷺ made a dua against him in that very moment. He said, Allah sick on him one of your kilab, right? One of your animals or one of your dogs, just sick on him. The Prophet ﷺ was disgusted by his behavior. And when he went back, his father was in the caravan. When he went back to join his father, they actually ended up camping in an area where they were warned that there are a lot of lions. There are a lot of beasts of prey and lions and things like that. And he was actually attacked that night, and he was killed. And Abu Lahab, when he told him that this is what had happened and this is what he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had extra security for his son because he realized that this is somebody special, but his enmity is on a whole different level. So he even tried to give his son extra protection, and he blamed the Prophet ﷺ for his son's death. But the death of Abu Lahab, when they went for the battle of Badr, Abu Lahab did not go. Abu Lahab did not go for the battle of Badr, right? He's one of the chieftains, he should have gone for the battle of Badr, but this is the kind of man he is. He paid for somebody else to go on his behalf. But while he was in Mecca, he was stricken with a contagious disease. A contagious disease, they call it Al-Adasa. Al-Adasa, I don't know, Adas now means lentils, right? But it's the spots that pop on your body. And so he was stricken with this disease for 7 days. 7 days he suffered, for 7 days, and then he died. After he died, his own sons were too afraid to touch his body. They were too afraid to touch his body. And so they left him for, the 7 days until somebody finally came and said, this is your father, you need to honor him, you need to bury him, you need to do something. But they were so scared of catching the disease, and there was now the rotting of his body, the stench of his body, the rot of his body. They threw water on it from far away, dragged it, threw it into a hole, threw rocks on top of it to cover it up. He was even buried in a way that was completely humiliating for his time. There was no honor in his burial whatsoever. His own family didn't even want to lay a hand on him, and they couldn't bear touching him. And so, subhanallah, when Allah Azza wa Jal, he made an example out of Abu Lahab. He really made an example out of him. So many of the chiefs of Quraysh, they died, or so many of them died in the battle of Badr. Some of the major evil ones were killed in the battle of Badr, but because he didn't go, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still, he had it written for him, and he made him suffer, and he put him through what he put him through. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to see His justice, His adl, and His punishment upon those that would go to extremes in causing, extreme harm to innocent people, right? To innocent people. And that's what Abu Lahab actually stands for. Someone that knew this person as a child, someone that understood the value of what he was bringing, but because he preferred his own personal power and wealth in this dunya, then allowing anybody else to do whatever they wanted, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him suffer. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us that lesson from these stories. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.